Hello, everyone, and welcome to another class of the theos Academy for Optimal Living. My name is Mindie Kniss, and as always, I'm super excited to be here with you. Today, what I'm going to discuss is how to be world-class in business and in life. Now, as a coach, I've seen all sorts of people across the board, from people who are just beginning in their careers to really high-level, powerful executives. And I've gotten the opportunity to watch them as they develop and as they become more successful in their lives from whatever point that they're starting at. So over the last decade, I've compiled a number of things that are really crucial for those that are going to stand out. And what I mean by stand out is those that are going to become even more successful than, say, their peers, or for those that are really just going to be a bright, shining light in their field. These people are what I would call world class, and they just do things a little bit differently. And none of the things that I'm going to share with you today are rocket science. They're not difficult by any means, but I thought that it would be just a good reminder for you and for me to say, what is it that I could do to kind of notch it up another level or to take it to the next step? Because really, that's what it's all about, right? We're here to grow, we're here to develop, and we're here to continuously learn. So if you kind of put these together and listen through these top 10, pick out a couple as I'm going through that you want to take on and put into action in your own life or in your own career. So starting with number one, this is probably the fundamental thing of everything that I'm going to say on the next 30 minutes. And that is, do what you say you are going to do. And that sounds so easy, so simple. Just do what you say you're going to do. It's that simple. And yet, so many of us have a hard time actually following through, actually committing to those things that we have said or given our word on that we are going to do. And I think that it's not that, we're a bunch of liars or that we have bad intentions in that, but we're super successful people and we like to do a lot of stuff and we like to be involved in things. And really what it comes down to, I think, is just overcommitting. We'll say yes to this and yes to this and sure I can do that and it's great, until you realize that you can't possibly get it all done within the time constraints that you have, or your family constraints that you have, or whatever your situation is. There are going to be boundaries that you can't necessarily get around. And when you've said, oh, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do that, it really becomes a problem when you can't fit it all in, essentially. So I totally understand the idea of wanting to do it all and wanting to just be a rock star in basically everything that you're working on. But essentially, those who are going to be responsible to the commitments that they've made, they're the ones that will follow through. They're the ones that you trust, that you respect, because you know that they're going to do it if they've said they're going to do it. That everybody knows somebody that, oh yeah, I'll see you at 4 o'clock, and you're sitting around waiting for them at 4:15 or 4:30, and maybe eventually they show up, or maybe eventually, you call them and you're like, hey, hello, oh yeah, I forgot, or oh, something came up, or, well then, obviously things come up in life, but do what you need to do to be as close to doing what you say you were going to do. Another way to talk about this is the way that the Four Agreements puts it is be impeccable with your word. It's really about just telling the truth. It's about being honest with where you are, what you can deliver, not necessarily what you would like to deliver in that fantasy perfection reality, but the idea of this is what I've got to offer, this is what I can do for you, so that's what's going to happen. And just let that be enough, because most often it is. So moving on to number two, kind of fits in alignment with number one slightly, do the right thing. Now, again, this is often also about telling the truth, just being honest with where you're at, what's going on. Let's say your company is committed to doing something, and then something happens, whether it's in your control or out of your control, that makes the result not on time or not in the fashion that you had initially described of what it was going to be. And I'll give you an example of this. I had a client who had sold a program in advance, and when the date came for the program to be sent out to the people that had purchased it, now, so all these people paid money for this thing, they didn't get anything. Nothing happened. And behind the scenes, that was because the program didn't exist yet. Still, on the day that it was supposed to be sent out, there was no program. So it wasn't necessarily a technical error or anything like that. It was just that it wasn't done. And so my client was struggling with, well, what do I do? Do I just automatically refund the people their money? Or do I scramble and put together something that might not have been as good and maybe then not as valuable? Or how do I make this right? And my recommendation, and you can take this many different ways, there is no necessarily one right way to do things, but my recommendation to him was, why don't you refund their money and then create the program and then send it to them as a bonus for free, just to say, hey, you know what? This was my bad. I kind of screwed this up. I realized that I'm taking the responsibility to, I said I would send this thing to you. I didn't send it to you. It wasn't complete. So here it is, free of charge. Obviously, it would depend on the pricing and all of those different things. But in that situation, that seemed like the right thing to do. So that's what he did. And let me tell you what, those clients were blown away. They're like, holy cow, are you sure you don't want some money? Or this is amazing. We're so grateful for you just being upfront and honest about what was happening and what was going on. And we're super grateful. I guarantee you those clients will buy from this person again. So do the right thing. It always comes down to the context, the situation, the circumstances, and the people. And like I said, there's not necessarily one right way to do it, but for your sense of self, your sense of ethics, your sense of morality, do the right thing. That's really what's going to make you stand out above and beyond everybody else. So again, tied into number 3, take responsibility. Now, if it's your own mistake, own it. If it's something that your team has made a mistake on, own it. And I don't mean that in a martyr-like way, oh, it's all my fault, it's me. No, what I mean is you need to see it from a higher level perspective, a bigger picture perspective, to be able to say, if my team is screwing up on this one thing or making mistakes in this one area, is it a possibility that the training that I provided to them wasn't appropriate, wasn't good enough or explanatory enough? I didn't maybe communicate something well enough to them, because if I had, they probably wouldn't have been making this error. So like I said, it could be about your team or it could be about yourself. Those who can take on 100% of the responsibility, they're never going to be a victim. And let me tell you, victims are not often very successful people. They are, looking to pass blame or excuses towards something external, where those of you who are going to be ultra successful and totally world class are going to say, yep, I own it. Because guess what? Nobody's perfect and everybody makes mistakes at some point. And what I love about the business culture today and in the entrepreneurial world, there is so much more of an open forum for that kind of discussion. It used to be that everybody had to put on this perfection mask and just act like, oh, we've got it all together and everything's fine, everything's wonderful, in fact. And everybody kind of knows that that's not true anyway. So going back to telling the truth, doing what you say you're going to do, it's really like, okay, I'm going to do the best that I can with the understanding that we're all human and sometimes my best is not going to live up to what I said I was going to do or that kind of thing. But then just having that ability to take the ownership of it, to own that responsibility, that puts you in the light of, wow, I'm human, you're human, let's get on with it. Let's figure out whatever needs to happen to make this right and let's go. We've got things to do, important things to do. So it's really about taking on ownership. And when I'm talking about your team, if you are in fact a business leader or owner, and I don't mean to say, oh, if you have a lazy employee or someone who's just a really bad employee, that's not what I'm talking about. You shouldn't take ownership for them. What I think you should do is get rid of them. I think you should surround yourself constantly with really good, valuable people. And that's going to help you as you progress in your business and in your life, really, is to be surrounded by just good folks. And so assuming that you are surrounded by those good folks, then they're not out to do something to the company or to you on purpose. They're just simply either making a human error or a mistake because they weren't trained enough or properly. So keep all those things in mind and really take that ownership, because again, like I said, having a world-class perspective is really taking it on you because you are the leader. Moving on to number 4, give generously. And what I mean by give generously isn't just necessarily giving of something or giving of money, but giving of your time and your energy, giving of your expertise. It's so important. And the things that I've watched people who are totally world class do is they raise up the people around them. They empower others. They edify others. It's not all about them. It's not that they became this powerful dictator in their company and that's how they got their success. No, they really brought together the team mentality, the collaborator mentality, and used that to build this successful, powerful engine that, yeah, they're in control, they're the top person, but it's all about this group mentality. So when they give generously, when they are able to, even if it's somebody that isn't necessarily in your same line, let me say that correctly, line of work, if you can offer them some sort of mentorship or some sort of guidance, that's so powerful. And that really puts you in a category totally outside of those who are like, no, I don't have time for that, or that's not my job, someone else will do the training, or those type of things. It's really just about having the gifts that you do have and then sharing them generously with others. So I totally encourage. I'm a huge person in terms of giving back, and it's really something that I strive to do in my personal life, in my company life, and also to encourage others to just say, how can we give more generously? What would that look like for us? So number 5, clean up your clutter. Now in Feng Shui, there is a place for everything. If you know anything about that ancient practice, it's really about, this is where this goes, and then there's space here, and then this goes here. It's very, and when you're looking at that kind of metaphor, it can apply across the board, all areas of life. And so in this case, what I mean by clean up your clutter is both the physical space that you are in, that is your office, your car, your home, or anywhere else that you spend a lot of time in, and also the emotional or non-physical space, that metaphorical idea of having clutter in your life. It's really about just cleaning up the messes. Because let me tell you, this is one where I struggle with probably the most. If there's something that is going to have to give in my life between my running my business, being in an awesome marriage, owning a puppy, maintaining the house, all these things, living life, having social life, all that stuff, the one thing that sometimes gives is the mess in the house, like the dishes in the sink. So I'm not here to say, oh, I do this perfectly by any means. What I'm here to say is I recognize that that affects even my work. So let's say I work from home, and let's say I have this huge mess in the kitchen sink of dishes that just have not gotten done yet. It affects me when I if I have to go write a blog, or if I have to go get on a client meeting, or whatever it is that is on my schedule next, which is the reason those dishes are still sitting there. That's still taking up mental space. Like, oh, I need to get this done, or that's such a mess out there, I'll get to it later. That is all energy that's in that clutter. So if there's a way, and sometimes I get it, there's just no time. So you have to kind of make it work in terms of the balance that you do have with your schedule. But that clutter does affect you. So check out your car, your office space, your kitchen sink, whatever it is for you, and clean up the mess. And I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the emotional messes. A lot of times that has to do with relationships or things that are just left unsaid. Cleaning that up is just clearing the space, clearing the energetic space so that you have more attention, you have more focus time for the things that you're here to do. That is your career, or the relationships that you want to maintain and sustain. There's no space for that if you have all these other little clutters around. So one of the things that I watch world-class people do is just go through and write down what are the messes that need to be cleaned up. And then they make a plan of action in order to get them cleaned up, and then they do it. So that's really the process. It's not just saying, oh, here's the recognition of all my messes, but here's the follow-through plan, and then here's the action to accompany those things. So clean up your clutter. Number 6 is lean in. Now, I'm totally stealing this from the title of Sheryl Sandberg's book, but she was talking specifically to women in that book, and she was encouraging them to become more involved in their companies or become more involved in the work, to raise their hand and to ask questions and to get involved with the stuff that's going on. She was noticing that men throughout history have obviously been the ones that have done that more. And so her call to women was to say, lean in, like get involved, get into this. And I would put that way more broadly. And I would say, lean into what is the current situation that needs to be handled. And I want to give you an example of this. When I was working in corporate America many years ago, I worked for a Fortune 100 company. So everyone was very proud of that and, kind of formal in that idea of like, we work for this huge company and this is great. And there was a woman that worked in my group who would wear all the time this really, really strong perfume. And it was very bothersome to people. Some people were allergic to it, and it was crazy strong. And it wasn't necessarily that it was a bad scent, it was just so, so strong. And everybody would kind of talk behind her back and say, oh, so-and-so must have been here because you can smell her perfume. And it was just this really weird thing. And nobody was willing to actually have a conversation with her, with the woman who was wearing the perfume. Even our management and the directors in the group, because everybody was affected by this. So it then was causing some interpersonal issues because nobody wanted to work with this woman. Not that she was a great employee, but they just couldn't handle being in close proximity. So there were all of these things, and I wasn't in management at the time, but what I did, and this is my way of leaning in, was I went to this woman. I said, can I talk to you for just a second? And so I took her into a room that, like a conference room, so we could have a private conversation. And I just shared with her that her perfume came across really, really strong, and that there were some people with allergies, there were some people struggling with that. And I said, this is not at all about, I don't want you to wear perfume, or I'm coming at you with some negativity or anything, but I just want to let you know what's going on, because this is how it's affecting the group. And essentially what everyone else had been doing is they were letting this big gorilla thing, or the elephant in the room, just sit there and fester and just become more and more of a mess, when really all it took was a conversation. So when I say lean in, I mean get involved in what needs your attention at the time. And it's not about necessarily going above and beyond everyone else, but what it is about is paying attention. It's about paying attention to what needs to happen to increase productivity, or to increase the success level, or to increase whatever it is that your benchmarks are at that time. It's about what's holding us back, even if it's a silly thing like perfume, and not having the fears and the insecurities to not handle that or not broach that subject, because it's just something that needed to happen. And so when I say lean in, just get involved in the conversations, in the work, in the whatever that needs to happen at that time. So number 7, maintain your boundaries. And this is kind of similar to do what you say you're going to do, but in this case, it's kind of the opposite of like what you are not going to do, what you can say no to. Maintaining your boundaries. It's not about becoming this yes man or yes woman. It's really about knowing what is in your possibility, what is in the time frame that you do have, what is appropriate for you to take on and say yes to. And also then everything else has to be a no. The practice that I give to my clients is just practice saying no. Say no to everything and just see what that feels like, because for whatever reason, a lot of the people that show up to my work are what I would deem people pleasers. So they're just like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Oh yeah, sure, I can help you with that. Oh yeah, okay, okay, okay. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, where are your boundaries? So we really work strongly about maintaining these walls of this is what I am capable of. And also, this is what I want to do. Don't put the stuff in there that you don't want to do in there. Of course, some of it's necessary, but if a lot of it's always coming in, build that wall a little bit stronger and say no. It's really about looking out for your best interest or your team's best interest in terms of if you're going to say yes to a project or a client, or if you're going to say no. And one of my favorite quotes that if you've watched any of my classes thus far, you've probably heard me say, because I say it all the time. I'm quoting the Reverend Ed Townley. He's a Unity minister, and he says, "The good is the enemy of the best." And what he means is if you're just saying yes to all this good, 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 that is an enemy to the best because there's no time or space for the best then to come in. You're holding all of the best out by maintaining this little bubble of good. So I don't know about you, but for me, I'd rather have the best. So the good is the enemy of the best. Don't settle for the things that are just so-so or that aren't really what you want to be doing. Say no to those and bring the best in to the time that you have and the abilities that you have. That's going to really help you to shine because you're going to be doing your best within that space of availability. So that is maintaining the boundaries. Say no often. Number 8, stop proving and start improving. I love the line. One of my teachers told me, if it's true, you don't have to talk about it. And I bring that up anytime I'm hearing somebody go on and on and on about, how much money they made or the success that they have with women or with men in dating or all these different things. It's fine to say that and to share those things. But if you have to go on and on about it, I'm like, really? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to prove yourself to me in this category of life or what? So I say, stop proving and start improving. And what that is about is constantly learning, using all the resources that you have available, going to things like lectures or seminars on your specific career or the topic that you're interested in becoming a leader in. Ask questions, read books or hire a coach or a mentor. There's so many things that you can do to continuously improve and kind of be building from the inside out versus just trying to put out this image that is probably mostly a facade or false to the world and say, oh, this is who I am. No, they can see who you are, so you don't have to talk about it. The example that my teacher uses when he says, if it's true, you don't have to talk about it, he says, Bill Gates does not go around and proclaim all over the place that he's a millionaire. That would be absurd. That would be ridiculous if he did that because everybody knows that. And he acts accordingly. He acts like a millionaire with his work in philanthropy and the charity that he's able to offer to the world. That speaks volumes for itself and is more powerful than if he were to go around and say, yes, I'm a millionaire. It just doesn't make sense for him to do that. So think about in your own life, where are you trying to prove something versus improve something? And really take note of that and then say, okay, what are the things that I could do to further improve in that area? So number 9, we're coming close to the end here. Number 9 is, of course, I had to throw this in, reconnect to your heart. That's my background, heart intelligence. So of course, and Matt's giving me the thumbs up. Awesome. Of course, I had to throw this in there because it's really easy to talk about success and leadership and business and all of these things that we love talking about without mentioning the heart because there are strategies and all these very logical things. But those people who are truly world-class, at least by my ideas, are the ones that are solidly rooted in their heart. And let me tell you what's going on there and why that helps. The heart is the source of courage, of love, of joy. And if you bring those things to the table, in addition to the strategies and the logic and all the other stuff that comes from the mind, great. That's such a more powerful position than if you're just fully in that left brain thinking space in the head. And the reason is because the heart, we know from science nowadays that it's a a dual communication. It's a two-way street. It's not just that the brain sends out all this information down through the nervous system to the body, but the heart is actually one of the major conductors of that information. The heart's kind of like a switching station, if you will, or a control center for all of this stuff that's going on within the body. And guess what? Within the cognition as well. They've done lots of studies now that the heart can actually understand or experience some sort of information up to 4.7 seconds prior to the brain. That is, so precognitively. It's so fascinating, and I could probably go on and on about this topic forever. But this idea of reconnecting to your heart, some of the questions that you can ask yourself in order to do that are, why are you in this business? Why did you get into this in the first place? What was it that initially inspired you? What was the catalyst for you wanting to get into this field of work? Or even you could take it personally as well. What was it that got you into this relationship? Why are you in this relationship, and what was the catalyst for that? If you can reconnect to those points of passion and curiosity and interest and all of those great things, that can be a really strong driver even today, even right now. The cool thing about emotion is that it's not necessarily tied to something way in the past or to something way in the future, because even if those events happened in the past or the future, we're experiencing the emotion of it now. So we can take the emotion of what first sparked my interest in this, or what did I fall in love with in this person, or what did I fall in love with in this career, and say, let me bring more of that to the table. And know that if I come from the perspective of love and of joy and of peace and confidence and courage and all of this great stuff that is in the heart, there's really no room for fear and insecurity. In other classes, I've talked a lot about how fear and insecurity reside here, not here. So if you're coming from that heart space, there is no fear and insecurity. And guess what? That is like a huge obstacle for most people that you can just wipe clean from your path. You can move forward then with just the confidence, just the courage, and the love and commitment, all that great stuff. And the path is a lot more clear than when you have it cluttered up with fears, insecurities, and all that messy stuff. So reconnect to your heart. Know what your mission is. Know why you're doing what you're doing, or why you're in the relationship that you're in. Or you could really apply it to any aspect of life. But really remember that, reconnect with those emotions, and bring those things to the forefront as you go forward. So finally, number 10. Number 10 is keep a when life works list. Now again, if you've ever learned from me in the past, you've probably heard about this, but I guarantee you that it is an important reminder, not just for you, but for me too. What a when life works list is a compilation of things that you are in control of, that is things that you can do on a daily or weekly or monthly basis that are happening when your life works. So if you think back to a time when you were feeling most in flow, things were really going well, everything was just working, what are the things that you were doing? Were you getting 8 hours of sleep each night? Were you meditating every day? Were you exercising every day? Were you going for a walk in the evenings? Were you reading, business marketing books, or were you reading for pleasure? Were you spending more time with your significant other, or were you spending less time? Whatever it is for you. There's not a right way to do it. But so you compile this list of when your life is working, what's going on, and then post it, put it on your wall, or put it somewhere that you can see it, and then constantly refer back to it. Because let me tell you, it's so easy when we're busy and things are going on and everything's going crazy to stop doing those things. So this is one of the simplest ways to just remind yourself, okay, if I can maybe do 4 or 5 things on that list, and it doesn't have to be a long list. I would say most people's are somewhere between 10 to 20 at the most. But if you can do maybe 4 to 5 a day, that sets you up to win, essentially. That sets you up to maintain that self-care that you need so that you can go out into the world and conquer whatever it is that you're going to go do out there, any of the battles that you need to go fight, and to win them because you're coming from a more fulfilled, more strong foundation, a better foundation to start with, so that when you go out there, you're totally able to be world class. So, as I mentioned, just to wrap this up very briefly, fear and worry essentially are the biggest obstacles, or insecurity you could call it. Those are the most potent obstacles to being world class. And so, with this list of 10 things, like I said at the beginning, take note of a few that you could work on to really just up your game, take it to the next level, and just be totally solid in you offering your world class service, your world class self to the world. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have comments or questions based on anything that I just said, we'd love to hear from you down below in the discussion area. So thanks so much.